Good morning, and welcome back to the second day of the Elder Abuse MDT Summit. It was a very, very exciting day yesterday, and we are thrilled to begin day two. A few housekeeping issues before we get started for those who weren't able to join us yesterday. First of all, due to the fact that the summit is being recorded, all attendees will be muted. Because of this, we ask that all questions be submitted in the chat box. And there was quite a vibrant discussion in the chat box, and so we can see that that's definitely being used. Second of all, any questions that you have, we're going to try to address at the end at the Q&A sessions, but things may come up. We noticed yesterday that there were times that the speakers wanted to hear questions, and if they do, put them in the chat box, and we'll be sure to try to get to those as well. If you have any technical issues or WebEx issues, feel free to chat directly with the host, or you can email Saxman1 at the email address that they're providing in the chat box. One more item. All of the materials that we talk about in connection with the summit will be on the department's Elder Justice website on the MDT Summit page. This includes all the agendas, the speaker biographies. All of the presentations will eventually be on the website, as well as a bunch of resources, both that were developed as part of this summit, as well as resources that were shared by our partners. So when this is all over or during one of the sessions, I encourage you to go to the website and take a look at the materials. We really tried to make the materials as useful as possible, so we hope you take advantage of them, and we think that they'll help. In terms of yesterday, for those who weren't able to join us, it was quite a day. And I think of it in terms of, we talked a little bit about the scaffolding around an MDT. Paige Ulrey, a prosecutor, started us off. She helped us understand how the MDT worked in her shop, the members of the MDT, and how the MDT members really helped to fill in the blanks, fill in those areas where the prosecutor did not have subject matter expertise. Notably, she talked a lot about capacity assessments and the fact that it was important oftentimes to understand sort of where the older clients were. And so having someone in-house that she can confer with on those issues was critical. Likewise, she talked about the fact of having a money manager or someone helping with the financial analyses that are often important in connection with financial exploitation cases. And so having members of those on the team were critical. She also urged us to think more broadly about what justice is. She talked about how oftentimes the justice system is geared towards focusing on the defendant and holding them accountable. And while that is certainly an important consideration, she urged us to also consider the victim as well, and how when considering the interests of the victim and their interests and their desires, sometimes they may take the prosecutor down a different path. And having an MDT helps the prosecutor think holistically about all those different issues and about the older victim as a whole. We also spent a lot of time exploring trauma-informed approaches as well as person-centered approaches and what they really mean. We've heard a lot about these interests, and having two different sessions delve more deeply into those was really, really helpful. For me, at least, what I took away as one of the most important things about the trauma-informed approach is helping us to shift the perspective. As Joy talked about, instead of thinking about what is wrong with the older victim, we should be thinking about what happened to them. And when we shift that perspective, it makes it easier to be more sensitive to the fact that we should be avoiding re-traumatizing the victim. Obviously, this is a critical factor in how we practice, and having that in the back of our minds will help shape sort of our practices going forward. Likewise, I thought the person-centered panel was incredibly illuminating from not shying away from the complexities of it all. When trying to be person-centered, when trying to honor the interests of the victim and holding those and being mindful of those, they can come into direct conflict with other interests of other members of the MDT, like law enforcement, like prosecutors who want to hold an offender accountable. But when we try to grapple with all those things, it's sometimes complicated. And I think what the panel illustrated nicely was the fact that it may not always end up in a picture-perfect outcome. that in order to honor the older victim's desires, which can be completely legitimate, for example, wanting to maintain relations with family members, it's complicated. And so it may sometimes lead to situations where it is frustrating for law enforcement, it is frustrating for other members to have the older adult continuing to live in certain circumstances. But I think what the team emphasized was the importance is always monitoring, even if at the end of a particular engagement, the decision is made to sort of let it lie. It's important to keep tabs on it, to continue monitoring, especially if there's a significant change in the circumstances and the safety around the older victim, in which case it may require a different type of intervention decision. And last but not least, we spent a lot of time talking about communicating with older adults. I thought that Chris did a very, very nice job highlighting the importance of the fact that in addition to being mindful of how we communicate with older adults, being mindful of the environment, being mindful of all the things that the older adult may be facing when talking with a member of the MDT, it's also important to be mindful of how to receive that information. And how it may manifest in different ways. And so I think that flexibility is an important lesson to take away. And I thought I did a great job in terms of conveying that. In terms of today, we're shifting gears. I think whereas I think of yesterday as building the scaffolding and exploring some of the theoretical and conceptual things that should guide the practice of MDTs, we're getting more into the nitty-gritty today. And seeing how a lot of these concepts, how the rubber hits the road. We'll be starting off talking about confidentiality, which, as many of you know who work in this space, is an incredibly important and threshold issue that has to be addressed when developing an MDT. What are the guardrails? What are the rules of engagement in terms of balancing privacy and personal information and all these other confidentiality concerns that different members of the MDT may have? Then we're going to have the benefit of an all-star state panel of representatives from 7 different MDTs around the country. As I'll talk about later, I always find panel discussions with peers to be some of the most informative because we know that they are facing the same challenges that we are. They're facing the same issues that we are. And so in having people up there talking about what they do and how they deal with different challenges, ranging from funding or practical issues, all of that's incredibly informative. And so we are excited to have our panel talk about that. We will also have someone talk about evaluations. As I'll mention later on, it's important for us to make sure that we are continually evaluating, making sure that everything is working well and identifying what isn't working well. But MDTs are not like factories. They're not generating widgets, and so cannot be measured in terms of productivity the way that some other things are. And so the question is, how do we evaluate how MDTs are doing? And so we're thrilled to have someone help us think through creatively and innovatively how we can do that to make sure that we are functioning as effectively as we can in order to support our clients and older victims. And the last panel discussion of the day will be talking about the RISE model. I know many of you have heard about these. The RISE model, a really exciting elder mistreatment prevention and intervention model. And we'll have 2 of the pioneers of this model talking with us and sharing with us how it actually works in practice. In addition to all of that, we'll have a number of breakout sessions which are available. This is one of those choose your own adventure deals where you will have an opportunity to choose among the different breakout sessions to the ones that most directly address issues that your MDT may be facing. And these MDT sessions, breakout sessions, will be focusing on trying to talk more granularly, more practically about some of the concepts that we talked about yesterday and work it through in a smaller breakout session. So we think that's very, very exciting and hope that gives you an opportunity to interact more directly with some of the speakers from yesterday and to hear from one another and learn. So we think that's a great way to incorporate and talk more factually about some of the things we learned about. So that is what we have in store for you today. So buckle up. It's going to be a very exciting day again. We're going to take a very brief break for about 4 minutes, and we'll be back with our first speaker at 10:15. So thank you, and we'll see you shortly.